Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Yevamot. We are up to Perik Aleph, Mishnah Gimel. Today's Mishnayot should be Leilu Nishmat, Neria ben Svetlana, Aranbayev, and Eliyahu ben Burcha Israelov, Menuchatam began Eden, Amen, and Avdir ben Chaim Nechaim, with the Refuah Shenamav, Daniel Shano ben Rosa, Betoch Shah Chulei Israel. Mishnayot 1 and 2 taught that one is not allowed to perform Yibum with his erva's co-wife. Our Mishnah teaches that one is allowed to marry the co-wife of his erva when they were married to someone other than his deceased brother, meaning they were married to someone unrelated to him who died and left these two widows, one of whom is an erva to him. The Mishnah illustrates this case by listing all the ervas who cannot have been married to the brother who died, because they were an erva to that brother as well. An attempted act of kiddushin, the first step of marriage, is completely ineffective with an erva. The Mishnah begins, Shesh arayot chamurot me'elu. There are 6 ervas who are more stringent than these 15 women listed in Mishnah 1, in that those 15 women can be married to one's brother, while these 6 women are necessarily married to others because they are forbidden to his brother just as they are to him. Tzaroten mutarot, therefore their co-wives are always permitted to him. The co-wife of an erva becomes forbidden to a man only because she was once the wife of his brother. Although she fell to him when his brother died, he was not allowed to perform Yibum with her. She therefore becomes permanently forbidden to him as an erva. However, where she was not married to his brother, the mere fact of her having been a co-wife to an erva does not make her forbidden. And since these 6 women can never be married to one's brother, any co-wives they have can only be through marriage to someone other than one's brother. Therefore, they are always permitted to him. And the commentators explain the key difference between the 6 women that our Mishnah will list and the women listed in Mishnah 1 is that the women in our Mishnah can never be married to his brother, so their co-wives cannot become forbidden to him, whereas the women in Mishnah 1 could have been married to one's deceased brother, in which case they could fall to him for Yibum, and their co-wives would become forbidden to him. But if one of the women listed in Mishnah 1, for example, his daughter, was married to someone besides his brother and that husband died, he would be allowed to marry his daughter's co-wife. The Mishnah lists these 6 ervas. Imo, a man's mother, even if she was not married to his father, for example, he was born out of wedlock. Although his mother is not the mother of his brother still may not marry her since she once had relations with their father. And the Mishnah here follows the view of Rabbi Yehuda in chapter 11, Mishnah 1, who forbids marrying a woman with whom one's father had relations but did not marry. Veshet Aviv, his father's former wife, even if she was not his mother, a man is not allowed to marry his father's former wife, as the Torah writes in Sefer Vayikra, chapter 18, verse 8. Since Yibum applies only to brothers who have the same father, she was forbidden to this man's brother just as she was forbidden to him. Va'achot Aviv, his father's sister, a man is forbidden to marry his father's sister, as it says in Sefer Vayikra, chapter 18, verse 12. His brother from his father's side was therefore also forbidden to marry her. Achoto me'aviv, his half-sister from his father's side, a man, in Sefer Vayikra, it says in chapter 18, verse 9, since she is his sister on his father's side, she must also be the sister of his brother from his father's side. Veshet achi aviv, his father's brother's former wife, that's in Sefer Vayikra, chapter 18, verse 14. Veshet achiv me'aviv, and the former wife of his half-brother from his father's side, when that marriage ended in a way that did not create a situation of Yibum, that's in Sefer Vayikra, chapter 18, verse 16. Since she was married to his brother from his father's side, she is an erva to all his brothers on his father's side. In all of these cases, if the unmarried woman, in cases 1, which was a man's mother, 3, his father's sister, and 4, his half-sister from his father's side, married someone, or the women who was once married to his relative, in cases 2, his father's former wife, case 5, his father's brother's former wife, and 6, the former wife of his half-brother from his father's side married someone else, and that husband died, and left the woman and her co-wives as widows, he may marry her co-wives. That is in Rabotai Mishnah Gimel. We continue now. Mishnah 1 taught that one may not perform Yibum with an Erva's co-wife. Our Mishnah, Mishnah Dal, Mishnah 4 teaches that this is actually the subject of a dispute between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel. Bet Shammai matirin atzarot la'achim. Bet Shammai permit the co-wives of an erva to the brothers, meaning they ruled that a brother may perform Yibum with his erva's co-wife. Therefore, even if he is the only living brother, she may not marry others without chalitza. Bet Shammai do not agree that the words litzro, to make them rivals, in Sefer Vayikra chapter 18 verse 18 teaches that an erva absolves her co-wife from Yibum. They disagree with that teaching. Bet Hillel osrim, but Bet Hillel forbid the co-wives to the brother, and if he is the only living brother, they are free to marry others without chalitza. And Mishnah 1 followed this view. The Mishnah notes some other practical consequences of this dispute. Chaltzu, if one of the co-wives of the erva perform chalitza with a living brother, Bet Shammai poslin min hakeuna. Bet Shammai consider this to be a meaningful chalitza and therefore disqualify that co-wife from marrying into the keuna, meaning from marrying a kohen. By rabbinic law, a kohen may not marry a woman who received chalitza since she resembles a divorce, and Bet Shammai consider this valid. Do Bet Hillel machshirim, but Bet Hillel consider this to be a meaningless chalitza since it was unnecessary, and therefore consider her eligible to marry a kohen. A second consequence in which the reverse is true, Bet Hillel disqualify her and Bet Shammai consider her eligible, nityabmu. If one of the co-wives was taken by the brother in Yibum and he then died, Bet Shammai machshirim, Bet Shammai consider her eligible to marry a kohen since this Yibum was entirely permitted. Bet Hillel poslin, but Bet Hillel disqualify her from marrying a kohen since the Yibum was forbidden, and a woman who has relations with a man to whom she is forbidden is rendered a zonah and forbidden to kohanim. Now, this dispute created a situation in which the Kohanim from Bet Shammai might be concerned about marrying women from the families of Bet Hillel and vice versa, since there were women that one side considered permitted to Kohanim, which the other side considered forbidden. Similarly, there were women from each side that even non-Kohanim could not marry. According to Bet Shammai, a co-wife of an erva was not allowed to marry anyone without performing chalitza with the living brother, whereas according to Bet Hillel, she was free to marry without it. On the other hand, according to Bet Shammai, a man is allowed to perform Yibum with his erva's co-wife, whereas according to Bet Hillel, the erva's co-wife is herself an erva. So any child that comes from this marriage is a mamzer, a product of a union that the Torah considers an erva, and a Jew of proper lineage may not marry a mamzer, as we know in Sefer Dvarim, chapter 23, verse 3. The Mishnah teaches how the families dealt with this. Even though Bet Hillel forbid the co-wife to the brother and Bet Shammai permitted to him, so families on each side of the dispute include a woman that its own side considered permitted but the other side considered forbidden, and even though one side of the dispute would disqualify some women from marrying Kohanim, while the other side would consider them eligible, like we discussed earlier in the Mishnah, lo nimnu Bet Shammai milisab Nashim mi Bet Hillel. Bet Shammai did not refrain from marrying women of Bet Hillel, v'lo Bet Hillel mi Bet Shammai, nor did Bet Hillel refrain from marrying women of Bet Shammai, because they always told each other about women that the other side would consider forbidden, so they would not marry them. The Mishnah further illustrates how other disputes between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel do not negatively affect their interaction. Despite all the ta'or items and tameh items that one side of the dispute considered ta'or and the other side considered tameh, each side did not refrain from preparing ta'or foods and utensils they borrowed from the other, because each side would always inform the other regarding utensils that the borrower considered tameh. And that is the Rabotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.